The Institute for Democratic Education, in cooperation with the Boston University Radio Institute, presents another program in its series, Lest We Forget These Great Americans, stories of Americans who will never die. These Great Americans, with Neil Hamilton as narrator. A series of programs designed to bring you the stories of men and women who dedicated their lives to the principles set down by America's founders, that all men are created equal. Today,
the year was 1933. The place was Germany.
For the Vaterland, for the party, I consign to the flames these volumes of the decadent American, Benjamin Franklin.
Let the flames purge for all time, for all the world, the mongrel democratic ideas expressed in the writings of the Americans Washington and Jefferson.
In the name of the Fuhrer, I consign to the flames the volumes of the Jew Albert Einstein.
For the Fuhrer, the party, and the Reich world, I consign to the purging fire the lying words of the Jew-loving German renegade, Franz Boaz.
Yes, like a false dawn, the flames of intolerance were lighting Germany. It was the year of our Fuhrer, 1933, and in the lights of 10,000 fires stoked by the words of Nazi culture and the bodies of Jews, the future looked bright. What were the words that were almost as bothersome to this new order as Democrats and anti-Nazis and Jews? What were the words that were being seared out of the superminds of the pure Nordics who walked that super earth of the new Germany? What were these words? And why were they obnoxious to this new people who wore the word barbarian as a badge of honor, who knew the joy of cruelty oh so well, who spat upon Christians and danced around monuments of burning Jews? Listen.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Words? No, ideas. Ideas carved out of the alphabet of the democratic mind and put on paper by a man called Thomas Jefferson, and to practice in the year 1776 by thousands of Americans who could not read, but who could fight for an idea that was right. Words? No, a dream of one world.
I tell you, a natural state of war exists between us white Americans and the blacks and Jews and Catholics. It's either them or us. And if it's going to be us, we better wake up and start exterminating them right now.
Words? No, incidents, happenings. A blowtorch applied to the feet of a Negro in Alabama. A Jewish storekeeper slowly bleeding to death under the lash of a group of white-cloaked figures who stood under a fiery cross on a hill in Indiana. A brick shattering the stained glass window of a church in Massachusetts. Yes, the borders of the world were shrinking, and the day of the brotherhood of man was at hand. Or was it?
The German race, with its culture, is superior to all the other nations and races of the earth, for our civilization has reached a height where it incomparably excels and dominates that of all the other nations and races of the earth.
Words? No. Again a plan for new ghettos, for cremation in the human incinerators of a concentration camp. A flat leather lash against the bleeding back of a Polish priest.
Noble races served God by conquest.
The sound of gas replacing the air in a small room in France in which stand 150 Frenchmen, women and children, waiting to die.
We must be masters or be slaves. Let the world once more be regenerated by German genius.
And always the sound of flames burning the body of a Dutch patriot or the pages of an American novel. A Superman was always ready to step forward with a full explanation for those who cared to have reasons for murder and rape and destruction. Call the long roll of the men and women who furnished the ideas, the dreams, the proofs that indeed all men are brothers, that the day of the neighborhood of the world was at hand, if we'd only rise to welcome it, and whose dreams were consigned to the flames and the pagan fires of 1933?
Thomas Mann.
Helen Keller.
Sigmund Freud.
Good names.
Heinrich Heine.
Familiar
Abraham
names
Lincoln.
in that list.
Jane Addams.
Names
Woodrow
from this
Wilson.
country and others.
Albert Einstein.
Yet they were
Thomas Jefferson.
unfamiliar ones, too.
Franz Boaz.
Franz Boaz. An unfamiliar name, perhaps, but an important one. Franz Boaz, American, born July 9th, 1858 at Minden, Germany. And it was in 1858 that a strand of wire called the Atlantic Cable was tying a bond of communication between the peoples of Europe and America. But the story of Dr. Boaz really begins in the late 1880s, when the young German scholar first came to America, the country that he was to adopt for life as his own. And, like thousands of other immigrants, his first problem was to look for work in this strange new land.
This is the office of the magazine Science, no?
Yes, I'm the editor. What can I do for you, mister?
My name is Franz Boaz.
Boaz. Never forget a name. Let's see. I've got it. Wrote a book, didn't you?
Why, yes, sir.
Eskimos. Yes, sir. A book about Eskimos. I reviewed it for the magazine. Pretty good, too. Sit down, Boaz. What can I do for you?
Thank you. I'm new to America. I would like to work. That is, in the field of anthropology. I thought that perhaps you would have a place on your staff for me. I know English quite well.
Well, it so happens that we could use a writer, but, Boaz, your Eskimo book, it had no snap, no human interest value, factual.
But I'm a scientist, sir. This snap, it does not matter. It's not important. Only the facts, the truth are important. Science, how shall I say, it is for the good of humanity, not for the curiosity seekers.
The pure scientist, eh?
As you please.
Boaz, listen to me. This is America. We don't keep our scientists here in ivory towers away from the people. Edison, Bell, Sam Morse, they're scientists, too, but they work for the people. The people need men like you here, Boaz, and you need them. They'll start to work tomorrow morning and think over what I've told you. Give it a good thinking over.
For nearly 50 years of study, of travel, of work, Dr. Franz Boaz was to cling to his view that science was the business of scientists alone, that popularization of his findings in the field of anthropology would be stupid and useless. The world was moving faster now, and ideas, good and bad, were traveling the circumference of the earth with the speed of light. And among these ideas was the crazy notion that race and religion and color were the scales on which the worth of man could be weighed.
All right. Next. Move along fast now. You, mister, want a job? What do you do?
I'm a paper maker.
Yeah? What's your religion?
Catholic.
Well, that lets you out, mister. Next.
All right, black boy, what you sitting there for?
What?
Listen, boy, you're going to give me talk or you're going to get back in that Jim Crow car with the black trash where you belong.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. You have a room available for tonight?
Yes, sir. Will you sign the register, please?
Yes. There you are.
Thank you. Now, if you'll just... Oh.
Is something the matter?
I'm sorry, Mr. Goldstein. You'll have to find another hotel. We've a restricted clientele here. Christians only.
high in the ivory tower of science that it had taken nearly 50 years to build, the cries of the oppressed peoples reached Dr. Boaz. And in 1931, he left the tower, left it at last, left it for good, and joined the people. And standing before an assemblage of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, he said,
"There's no reason to believe that one race is, by nature, so much more intelligent, endowed with greater willpower, or emotionally more stable than others, that the difference would materially influence its culture. I believe that the present state of our knowledge justifies us to say that while individuals differ, biological differences between races are small. What is happening in America now is the repetition on a larger scale and in a shorter time of what happened in Europe during the centuries when the people of North Europe were not firmly attached to the soil. The high nobility of all parts of Europe can be shown to be a very mixed origin. No, civilization is not the product of a single people. Ideas and inventions were carried from one people to the other, and though intercommunication was slow, each people contributed its share to the general progress. I say to you that we must bow to the genius of all mankind, for together we have forged civilization."
And a year after he spoke, the debunked blonde supermen of Germany were on the march. And what Dr. Boaz so tersely branded as Nordic nonsense was no longer nonsense, but a mad giant with a sword in its teeth and blood in its hands. And the books were burning and the boots were bruising the flesh of the Jews, of the Poles, of the Catholics, of the unchosen. And for a scientist, it would have been easy to be silent, to have climbed the long stairs to the Tower of Culture. But Franz Boaz was in the fight now, and he struck out again.
For the present condition of the world, I consider the race question a most important one. I will try to clean up some of this nonsense that is being spread about race these days. I think that the question is a particularly important one for this country, too. Here also the people are going crazy.
What was race?
What we know as race is largely a matter of environment. There's no such thing as pure race. All European races are a mixture of many stocks, and that is true of America, too. Germany, which boasts of its purity, has one of the most mixed stocks in Europe, and it is pure nonsense to speak of a Germanic race.
And in Germany, a ledger was opened, and the hand of the Superman recorded the name of Dr. Franz Boaz as one of those who was to die on the final day of Nordic victory. But again, Dr. Boaz struck back. He, too, signed his name to a manifesto, and with thousands of other American scientists, he said,
"American scientists hold fast to their convictions that science is wholly independent of national boundaries and race and creeds, and can only flourish when there is peace and intellectual freedom. It is in this light that we publicly condemn the fascist position toward science."
Dr. Franz Boaz did not live to see the final victory over the men he fought so well. He died in December 1942. But other men of science still live and fight in his ideals. And in Germany, the fires of intolerance are out forever. And it cannot be denied that the words of free men have lived through the flames. For the men of all colors, all races, all creeds have won a victory that must endure, so that all men will remain forever free and equal.
This program was brought to you by the Institute for Democratic Education in cooperation with the Boston University Radio Institute. Listen in again next week to another program in the 10th series of Lest We Forget These Great Americans.